I take you inside the Mayfair fashion house of Norman Hartnell, and I introduce you to two of the women who created the embroidery on Princess Elizabeth's wedding gown. And through their eyes, I show you what it was like to live in Britain at that time, and also how difficult it was to survive the aftermath of this terrible war. I should add there's also a Canadian element to this book, because one of my three central characters is a Canadian woman, a present-day character, and she's seeking answers about a set of embroideries that she's inherited that closely resemble those on the princess's wedding dress. What interests us in a royal wedding? For me personally, and I will say this is the case with the recent royal weddings, it's the gown that the bride wears. And so as I started digging, I realized that there were stories to be told in the lives of the women who created the gown that Princess Elizabeth wore. You know, when we talk about royal weddings, we talk about the designers, we talk about Sarah Burton for McQueen, or Givenchy, or Hartnell. And they are wonderful designers, but they didn't actually make the gown. The people who made the gown remain anonymous, and I wanted to look into what their lives were. So my characters are fictitious, but they're based on the lives and experiences of real women who worked at Hartnell. One of the most interesting things I did while researching the gown was I decided to learn how to do the embroidery myself. I should add that I'm certainly not a talented embroiderer, nor could I do this work as well as the women who created Princess Elizabeth's wedding dress. But I wanted to get a sense of what it was like to sit at a chair in front of an embroidery frame for hours on end and do this extremely fine and exacting work. So I went to London to a hand embroidery atelier that has been open in London for the past 250 years. And their embroiderers there taught me how to do some of the embroidery that would have been used on the gown. And after a very long day and a lot of help from one of their master embroiderers, I managed to make this, which is a replica of one of the motifs from Princess Elizabeth's wedding dress. It took me an entire day to make one of them. And I just, by the end, I was done. But I'm so glad I spent the time learning how to do this embroidery myself. Some of my secondary characters in the gown are based loosely on real people, in the sense that Norman Hartnell, the real designer who created the Queen's iconic coronation gown and her wedding gown when she was a princess, he appears in the pages, as do certain members of his staff. But in terms of my central characters, they are all fictional. I just had to create my own characters with the knowledge that I wasn't stealing somebody else's story or telling it in the wrong way. I do make one exception, in that the lovely, lovely Betty Foster, who was so important to me as a resource for the book, she was a seamstress at Hartnell. With her permission, I made her a minor character in the book. Who does not love the crown? In the larger sense of the historical picture, broadly speaking, they do get the details right. In terms of the details of the material details of the setting, the clothing, it is gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning. And I would look to the first episode of The Crown when Princess Elizabeth is married. And the replica gown they made for that episode is spectacular. I'm not sure how they managed to afford it on the budget they were working with, because the original gown itself is priceless and took so many people working at such a high level to create. But interestingly, it doesn't look like they took any shortcuts. I would love to see the gown from the crown up close, and then maybe I could make a real comparison.